Welcome to the motherfucking we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Just as I expected, Ryan Garcia is not going to be fighting Devin Haney next. Ryan took to his social media and he said, "I've notified my team I'm going a different route. My intentions now are to fight Romero. I pray my team backs me on this decision. Oscar, make this fight happen. That's the move. Bigger fight, bigger business."
Smarter business. It's not that I support Ryan Garcia wasting Devin Haney's time or the fans' time. It's that the only guy more limited than Ryan at or around these weights is Rolly. And the Rolly-Romero fight, by and large, is a much more winnable fight than the Devin Haney fight. I wasn't convinced that would happen.
Based on what I saw in Ryan's last fight, I wasn't convinced that would be his next fight, and it isn't. As Ryan says, after what happens to Rolly, the Devin Haney fight will be there and even bigger. Everyone's critiquing now. We'll end up seeing it as a better move. Plus, he can go fight Richardson Hitchens. Go do your 30,000 pay-per-view buys. I don't need you, Devin. You need me.
Is he right?
I think he is. As it pertains to making the Haney fight a bigger fight than it is right now, if he fights Rolly first and dispatches him and takes that WBA title from him, that would, in effect, make the Devin Haney fight a bigger fight. That doesn't mean I support what Ryan is doing. That means I understand. Devin Haney himself is less than understanding, saying, "Don't ever mention my name, pussy boy."
The virtue of Ryan fighting Rolly before he fights Devin is he stands a much better chance of beating Rolly than he does of beating Devin, and if he does beat Rolly, he becomes a champion himself.
And in becoming a champion himself, in many ways, that gives him even more leverage over Devin. You must understand that even though Ryan isn't as good a fighter or as accomplished as Devin, he is a bigger name. He is more popular. If he approaches a Haney fight with a title of his own, in tandem with his profile, that would, in essence, make him the clear A-side over Devin Haney. As strange and unsettling as that might sound, Ryan Garcia himself responded to Devin by saying, "You'll be back, 30,000 pay-per-view buys, pussy."
People aren't happy.
I don't blame them. But if my feathers aren't as ruffled as somebody else's, it's because I didn't think Ryan was going to fight Devin next anyway. I don't really know what exactly happened here. I don't know for sure what all of this was, but I know that I didn't expect the fight between them to happen. Not next. Maybe down the line, but not next. Not based on how Ryan looked in his last fight, and not based on what happened the fight before that, getting stopped by Gervonta. Just 2 fights ago, you suffered your first professional loss. You rebound off the loss, but you're not going to jump right back into the fire just yet. Not if you can face Rolly first, and I think that he can.
Rolly himself took to his social media and uploaded a poster featuring him versus Ryan Garcia, hinting at a spring showdown.
If people are angry, it's because Ryan's the one that got the ball rolling for the Devin Haney fight. It's because Ryan is actually the one who called out Devin Haney, took to his social media to do it, saying he's contacted his team to contact Team Haney to do a fight with him. That in many ways, this is the old switcheroo, the old bait and switch. You wanted people to believe you were going to fight Devin, all the while what you were really going to do was fight Rolly.
After the Haney versus Prograis fight, after Devin's dominant performance, that's what Ryan did. He took to his social media, he said he contacted his team, and he wants to fight Devin next. He started this.
And that's why people are angry. They're angry because he reneged. They're angry because seems like he was just wasting everybody's time. Our time, Devin's time, but because I never believed him, because I never believed that this would be Ryan's next fight, I'm not as angry as some people. And the question is, how do you get Rolly in the ring with Ryan when he's supposed to have a mandatory challenger in the queue? Well, I'm sure you can convince the WBA to stand down, to stay their order, to allow this fight to happen, because this fight is a much bigger fight than Rolly fighting his mandatory.
Based on the size of this fight, tell a mandatory to stand down. Pay him some step-aside money on the condition that they'll fight the winner of Romero versus Garcia. Problem solved.
You get the mandatory's blessing, you get the WBA's blessing, then you do that fight in the second quarter of this year. The other question is, who's going to distribute the pay-per-view? Who's going to be at the helm of promotions? And it being that the PBC very recently inked a deal with Amazon Prime, but it's rumored that Prime isn't actually giving them a budget. They're just distributing their content. They're not paying for any of it themselves. It's conceivable that Rolly would have to go over to Golden Boy Promotions, and DAZN.
He's the champion. Why would he do that?
Because the PBC may not have the money to bring Ryan over to their side of things, the guaranteed cash. They may not have the cash, and because this fight for Rolly is a more winnable fight than most any and every other fight in the super lightweight division. If he ends up having the fight as mandatory, not only will it be for less money, he might lose.
Why take the chance? Go over to Golden Boy, see if you can't handle Ryan, and even if you can't, you end up making more money than you would have made satisfying your mandatory.
Even if you lose, you still end up making more money. Rolly versus is mandatory. You can't bill that as a pay-per-view. It's not going to sell anything, but Rolly versus Ryan, you can sell that as a pay-per-view.
It all evens out, so even though I'm not for Ryan wasting people's time and giving everyone the runaround, Devin Haney included, even though I'm not for it, I understand it.
As soon as you put Ryan Garcia in the ring with Devin Haney, that's as soon as Devin Haney beats him. But he stands a better chance of winning with Rolly, and I think underneath it all, they've always known that. They were never serious about fighting Devin next. Simple question. Do you think Ryan was actually serious about fighting Devin based on how he looked in his last fight? In men's super middleweight news, Ronnie Shields believes David Morrell is ready for Canelo as well. When is he going to get his opportunity? Most of what we've heard from David Morrell is an expressed desire to face his PBC stablemate David Benavidez, but he also happens to be Canelo's mandatory as well, so it's a valid question. Not just Benavidez, what about Canelo? Asked Shields during an interview with BoxingScene.com. Morrell will soon realize that in order to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, he'll have to grab a ticket and head to the back of the line. As the division's undisputed champion and one of boxing's cash cows, practically everyone, regardless of their weight, wants to get their hands on him. When last seen, the Mexican star was busy putting a beating on Jermell Charlo. The current unified junior middleweight titleist barely fought back, spending most of his time languishing on the ropes while Alvarez continued to beat on him round after round. And I reiterate, I'm not against David Morrell getting his opportunity. I'm not against the question. It's a valid question. When does David Morrell get his shot? And therein lies the dilemma.
What?
David Benavidez is ahead of him in the queue. He became Canelo's mandatory first, and he's been his mandatory longer than David Morrell. Now, rumor has it that the Canelo versus David Benavidez fight might go down in September.
Canelo is fighting someone else in May.
And if he's not fighting them, if he's not fighting David Benavidez or David Morrell, what the hell are they gonna do in the in-between time? When last we saw Canelo, he was taking care of business against Jermell Charlo, who many people thought he'd been avoiding all these years. Team Morrell watched every second of it. Ultimately, they weren't quite impressed considering the size disparity. Shields is well aware that Morrell is nowhere near Alvarez's radar despite being in possession of the WBA's secondary trinket. The waiting game can be mundane, but Shields knows good and well that they don't have much of a choice. Just last weekend, the duo took care of business against Sana Agbeko, knocking him out in just 2 rounds. From Shields' point of view, although it's early, his fighter has done more than enough to share the ring with Alvarez. If nothing else, he is his mandatory challenger.
He is, but his problem is, he's not the only one.
So let's put our cards on the table, gentlemen. I'm a big fan of Canelo Alvarez, but I'm not so big a fan that I advocate against fights, the Benavidez fight, the Morrell fight. As a fan of Canelo, I don't behave the same way that, say, Gervonta Davis's fans behave when it comes to him, telling him to avoid every solid fighter at his weight. No, I want to see Canelo Alvarez fight either David Benavidez or David Morrell.
I'm not upset that Ronnie Shields is asking, when is David Morrell going to get his opportunity? No, I understand it.
Here is reality. Canelo's not fighting David Benavidez or David Morrell next. He's not fighting either one of them in May. Rumor has it he may fight David Benavidez in September, and that's per David Benavidez' own father. That's the big fight that we're looking at for the near future this year. The not-so-distant future, I should say.
Then what's the problem?
The problem is that September's not right around the corner. We're in January. September is approximately 8 months from now, a little over 8 months from now. So what exactly is David Benavidez gonna do while he waits for Canelo? And what's David Morrell gonna do? I propose that they fight each other. Instead of all these guys just playing it safe and sitting on their hands, waiting for the phone to ring, I'm a boxing fan first. I want to see boxing matches. And that's a boxing match that I would like to see while we wait. And let the winner advance to a Canelo Alvarez fight. What do you think? That because David Benavidez fought Caleb Plant after Canelo knocked him out, and because he just fought Demetrius Andrade, that he shouldn't have to fight anyone after that he shouldn't have to fight David Morrell. It makes sense, perfect sense, that they fight each other and let the winner advance to a Canelo Alvarez fight, because what exactly is David Benavidez going to do from now until September? What's David Morrell going to do?
What are they going to do?
The Morrell people are adamant that they now feel ready to take David Benavidez on. They're on the same side of the street, they fight under the same banner, in the same division, and they're both mandatory challenges to the same guy. The idea that everybody's going to sit around waiting to do a round robin with Canelo, that he has to fight all these guys, it's just not realistic.
Not unless you're ready to wait, willing to wait. And whether you like it or not, that's what you're going to have to do. If Canelo fights whoever he fights in May, then David Benavidez in September.
Just say that he wins, and he stays undisputed champion. Well, David Morrell won't get him until the following year. Next year. That's if Canelo wins. If Canelo loses, that Benavidez fight might turn into a 2-fight engagement, and that pushes your title shot back even further. So instead of just waiting around and playing the waiting game, wouldn't it be a better idea to have David Morrell fight David Benavidez? And wouldn't that help to build the Canelo Alvarez fight for the winner, whoever the winner is?
If people don't already know who David Morrell is, wouldn't it help his situation if you put him in there with David Benavidez and he beat him? Or vice versa. David Benavidez has been on pay-per-view twice and he didn't sell anything.
They're trying, but who actually thought Caleb Plant was going to beat David Benavidez? Who thought Andrade was going to do it? Those were all but foregone conclusion fights. If you put him in there with David Morrell, that's a fight with a little bit more spice.
Simple.
David Benavidez' last 2 fights were pay-per-views. If he insists on boxing on pay-per-view exclusively moving forward, you can't just stick him in there with some ham and egg guy. So put him in there with David Morrell.
What's the problem?
You don't want to see that fight? Finally, our continued coverage of what is supposed to be the Joshua versus Ngannou fight in March, and my confidence, the shared confidence, that Anthony Joshua will do the demolition job on Francis Ngannou that Fury failed to do. You may be thinking to yourself, well, how can you be so sure? And how can boxing fans be so sure that Anthony will not only win this fight, but win it in knockout fashion when Tyson Fury didn't do that? How can boxing fans be so sure that this won't be another instance where the sport takes a collective hit, the way it did when Fury faced Francis Ngannou? Well, it's because of 2 things, 2 primarily, maybe 3. Now, one, which I've mentioned several times already, is that Francis won't have the element of surprise going in the way he did in the Fury fight. That's one. 2 is that Anthony is a more consummate professional than Tyson Fury. He will take the assignment seriously in all the ways that Tyson Fury didn't. That's 2. 3
is that, well, Francis Ngannou definitely exceeded expectations in the Fury fight. What was the expectation?
That is, what was the expectation based on? Well, it was based on Tyson Fury being number 1. It was based on Tyson Fury being this era's premier heavyweight. And as many of you already know, I didn't think that. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid on Tyson Fury just because he manhandled Deontay Wilder. You will notice that with Ngannou, he didn't try to manhandle him because he couldn't. He tried to box him. He tried to move and punch and jab him. Tyson Fury's jab, for me and my money, is a flimsier jab, a more flaccid jab than what you see from Anthony Joshua. It's a stiffer jab that lands with more authority. I still think Anthony is a far bigger puncher than Tyson Fury in spite of those 3 Wilder fights.
Those 3 Wilder fights made people think that Fury is all of a sudden this mammoth puncher, this massive puncher.
Fury's punches his shot selection. I mean, he's a smart fighter. He's a very smart fighter and a good fighter, though grossly overrated. You will notice that his jab, it's not a stiff stick that lands with authority. It's a flimsy jab. He changes the cadence on it, how hard he throws it, but it's still a flimsier jab than what you see from Anthony Joshua. For me and my money, I think Anthony can land with all the authority.
More than Fury.
Anthony beats him with basic fundamentals. Basic fundamentals and usage of the jab to not only manage the distance, but punish Francis Ngannou. That's what'll beat him. That's how he'll beat Francis Ngannou, with basic fundamentals.
That's how he'll break him down.
Jabs up top, jabs upstairs, and decoy jabs to the solar plexus or the body to get him to drop his hands. Get him to drop his hands, which set him up for big shots upstairs, big right hands.
Francis exceeded expectations with Fury because the expectation was Fury being number one, he should beat him easy. But what if Fury ain't number one? What if he ain't this era's best heavyweight? Then your perception is skewed.
Though Francis didn't seem out of place, he seemed to know his way around the ring, and I think his trainer, Dewey Cooper, who trains both MMA fighters and boxers, and he used to be a boxer himself, I think Francis not looking out of place. Yeah, Dewey Cooper, of course he's got something to do with that, but it's also the hyperbole attached to Tyson Fury.
Doesn't take care of himself in between fights, and he didn't take this fight seriously. Anthony will.
And Anthony takes better care of himself in between fights. He's younger than Tyson Fury, more athletic than he's given credit for, faster than he's given credit for, and I think stronger than Tyson Fury. Thus, being able to land with power jabs, being able to land with authority, that might elicit more respect from Francis than Francis gave Tyson Fury, which would then allow Anthony to manage the distance and get his punches off, take control of the fight.
There's no rush.
Likewise, going in, Tyson Fury was perceived as already being better than Anthony Joshua, having not fought him. If Tyson Fury can go in there with Ngannou, stink out the joint, and get sat on his ass.
AJ doesn't have to be in a rush. Fury set the bar so low, he can take his time. Break Ngannou down with the lead hand.
Condition him. Get him worrying about the jab and thinking about the jab so he doesn't see the right hand coming.
You ain't gotta blast him out of there in 1 round or 2 rounds. Tyson Fury didn't. Tyson Fury went the distance with him. So Anthony can take his time, knowing that.
That's why I'm confident that Anthony Joshua can do the demolition job on Ngannou that Tyson Fury didn't do, because poise matters, and poise counts. He was poised in the Otto Wallin fight. He wasn't in a hurry to get him out of there. He broke him down round after round. I think he's going to do the same thing to Francis Ngannou.
Francis will find out what Otto Wallin found out.
Otto going in said that he thought Fury was better than AJ, and he used to think that Fury would beat AJ until he fought him.
That changed his mind. And we talked about that here on the channel. I think Francis is about to have the same revelation.
Basic fundamentals, that's the ticket. It's basic fundamentals that are going to beat him. Using the jab, managing the distance, and protecting yourself at all times, keeping your hands high, not leaving yourself open for stupid punches, good foot positioning. Anthony's got all those things and more. And he can land with more authority than Tyson Fury. Thus, I'm confident. Not only does Anthony win, he stops this guy.
I'm looking forward to it.
I don't usually support these crossover fights, but this one, I can get behind this one.